Golf Central on YouTube, brought to you by the Rogue ST Woods and Irons from Callaway.
Greetings and welcome. Steve Burkowski with you for this Golf Central update. The PGA Tour this past weekend just outside the nation's capital, TPC Potomac at Avenel Farm for the Wells Fargo Championship. In the end, it was a final day 68 for Max Homa. Good enough for a two-shot win over three other players. It was Homa's fourth victory of his career on the PGA Tour as he has his sights set on bigger things.
It's a continuing journey. I know I should be out here, but every level you get to in this game, there's always something coming next. So like for John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler, the last couple world number ones, it's like you get there and now you have the entire world chasing you down. So it's like, what is, you still have, I'm sure, some minor insecurities about that or thoughts of it. So yeah, as I started to establish myself on this tour, when I won this event in 2019, I definitely knew I was capable of being a regular PGA Tour player. But then all of a sudden, last year I get in the top 50 in the world, and then you start looking around, it's a new crop of people, and then you start thinking to yourself, am I as good as these guys? And then, I want to be top 10 in the world, play President's Cup, play Ryder Cups. Am I good enough to do that? So I've always struggled with it, but I have great people around me who bash me over the head, telling me that I am that guy. And I try to walk around this week believe in that and faking it a little bit till I made it. And I will say, I was with my coach Mark Blackburn last weekend in Alabama, and that was a big focus we had. And I will say that the faking it worked because I showed up today and I felt very tall.
The results don't lie as we take a look at players with 4 or more PGA Tour victories since May of 2019. Patrick Cantlay with 6, McIlroy, Morikawa, and Thomas with 5 each. And there is Max Homa. 2 wins this season, 4 over the last 3 years. And you just heard him. Bigger things ahead. He hopes to maybe make a President's Cup team or a Ryder Cup team in the future. A lot going on at this point of the golf calendar in May. Major championships upon us all across the world, and also some upcoming important dates for the LIV International Series and the PGA Tour schedule. May 10th, the deadline for response to conflicting event that is going on in England, which happens June 9th through 11th. You've got major championships before and after. Another LIV event in Portland in early July. A whole lot of layers to deal with over the next 6 to 8 weeks. Always enjoyable to spend some time with our good friend Eamon Lynch. And Eamon, we just went over a lot of dates over the next couple of months that I think many people will have their eyes on. From your standpoint, what are a couple of the key dates to focus in on leading up to the start of the LIV Golf Tournament calendar?
To me, those dates are May 17th and June 1st, Burko. We can kind of dismiss this London event and the decision that will be rendered by tomorrow by the PGA Tour in terms of releases for that event, because precedent exists for that. They have long allowed money grabs as long as they're not contradicting the PGA Tour's own schedule. So you may see them apply some conditions to the releases that are given for that event, but I would expect the Tour to issue those releases. The 2 dates that matter are next Tuesday, May 17th, by which time players have a 5 p.m. deadline to submit a request to play in the second LIV Golf event in Portland, Oregon, scheduled for July. And then by June 1st is the date by which the Tour has to render a verdict on that. And the reality is the Tour could offer that verdict at 5:01 p.m. next Tuesday, because it's a no. It can only be a no under the Tour's own guidelines, because the Tour's rules, which all of these players have signed up for, do not permit releases for events played against their own schedule in North America.
Let's say a couple of players or maybe a handful sign up to try to get a spot into Portland. What do you think that next step could be for the PGA Tour, or maybe more importantly, the R&A, since that Portland event is just a couple of weeks before the Open Championship?
Well, that Portland event really has to be the red line for the PGA Tour, and I've heard several players say that privately over the last few weeks. There is no criteria by which there can be a release granted to players then, and I think it might even be a mistake, Steve, to suggest that all players who intend to show up in Portland may even actually apply for the waiver. They know the answer is going to be no, so they may not even go through the protocol of actually asking for that release and instead just show up during that week in Portland to play, July 1st through 3rd. That in turn then causes a trigger problem, because you're likely looking at disciplinary proceedings being launched against these players by the Tour. How quickly the Tour would choose to move on that is another matter. That could in turn then trigger litigation by players trying to decide whether or not the Tour has the right to control their schedule. And all of that could end up on the doorstep of Martin Slumbers at the R&A, because the Open Championship, the 150th Open in St Andrews, kicks off 11 days after the Portland tournament ends. If the Tour does find itself in the position of taking disciplinary action against members, then, well, that may actually happen before the Open Championship, in which case the R&A has to decide whether or not players who are not in good standing with the PGA Tour have the right to compete.
Eamon, so many layers to this, especially after Phil Mickelson's comments to Alan Shipnuck were made public. A lot of PGA Tour players quickly responded saying, I'm committed to this tour, the PGA Tour that is, and Rory McIlroy even said in February, the LIV Golf Series, this is a dead issue. Where do you sense momentum may be going the opposite way now, a few months later, when you hear names like Lee Westwood, Sergio Garcia, and other world-class players, at least at the bare minimum, saying they are applying for that exemption? Where do you think the pendulum's swinging now?
Well, I'm sure Greg Norman would claim there's a lot of momentum behind this, Steve, but, you know, train crashes have momentum as well, and there really is momentum only in the sense of the turning of the calendar here. They're getting closer to the first event. You don't see a lot of momentum in terms of the quality of the field or in terms of the end product, or even actually in terms of fan engagement, I would argue, because most fans seem to look at this still as a news story, a curiosity, rather than anticipating some kind of rival platform here that will rival what they're accustomed to in terms of either the PGA Tour or the DP World Tour, wherever they get their golf. So I don't see a great deal of momentum in terms of the quality of what is being produced here. And the names aren't actually any surprises at this point. You know, Lee Westwood, Sergio Garcia, other names like that have been bandied around for quite a while now about this LIV Golf Investments Tour. They don't have anyone else in the elite tier of the PGA Tour, because you look at the guys who said they're out. You know, Tiger, JT, Koepka, Rory, DJ, Jon Rahm. There's a long list of players who are not going to be part of this. The list of players that they do have who are willing to be part of it right now isn't particularly impressive.
Yeah, we're going to have to see how this plays out in the coming weeks and months ahead. But next week, we've got another major championship, the PGA Championship. That field has been released, and still on the list of entrants, the defending champion, Phil Mickelson. What do you think the next 10 days might be like for Phil in his lead-up if he actually sees this through and tees it up to go back-to-back at a PGA Championship?
I think we're looking at golf's version of Hamlet. Will he or won't he? Right here, Steve. It's really hard to say, and there's no sense from anyone at the PGA of America whether or not they know Phil Mickelson's going to play. I think it would be a huge story if he does. Whether or not the PGA of America wants that circus, or at least wants the circus extending into tournament days, is another matter. And the cynic might argue that Phil's name is on the list, but he might not show up, because doing so would only draw greater attention to a possible return playing for the Saudis in London a month from now, which is the next thing he's publicly subscribed to.
As you said, will he or won't he? The wait continues. Eamon Lynch, always good to catch up. Appreciate your insights as always.
Thanks, Steve.
The LPGA Tour in the Garden State of New Jersey for the Cognizant Founders Cup. We take a look at some of the notables in the field. Not a surprise to see some of the very best on the LPGA Tour making the trip to New Jersey and Upper Montclair Country Club, led by world #1 Jin Young Ko. You see Alexi Thompson there, Yuka Saso, Lydia Ko, Minjee Lee. Should be a great week in New Jersey for the ladies. The season-long race to the CME Globe, rather. Take a look at the top 10. Tight at the top, Danielle Kang hang on to that top spot, and Anna Kurtz-Madsen and Jin Young Ko rounding out the top 3 of that season-long race. And that's your Golf Central update. Thanks so much for watching.